Hello, I'm Richard, and I would like to welcome you to TrackTrail, which is our fantastic next generation tracking portal. This video is going to show you the very basics right the way through to some advanced features on how to use our tracking system. So let's start at the beginning. You'll have been sent an email and you will have some login credentials which you're going to put into the website. And once you've logged in, you're going to see three different menu options at the top. This one, Orders, is purely interested with ordering a tracker if you want an extra one to hire. Perhaps you own and you've purchased 5 trackers, and one weekend you might want to order an extra one. So I'm not going to go into that detail. It's simply a very basic order form where you can order a tracker for hire. Events I'm going to go into in a minute. This one is where you'll actually go and set up the events for your new trackers. But the first one I'll go into is the trackers themselves. So if I click on here, your trackers may or may not appear within this list. If the trackers don't appear in this list, then we have sent you some instructions on how to add those. And adding trackers is simply achieved by clicking on the plus button, and you will type in your tracker number here and the equivalent phone number which relates to it, and then click Add Tracker. And you'll repeat that for each of your trackers. And once done, you should see your 3, 4, 5, 10, however many trackers you've ordered, they will all appear in this list. So what does this screen do? Well, this is primarily designed to allow you to activate or hibernate your tracker and also send it reset messages. By activate or active, we mean that the tracker is going to be in use in any given month, and by hibernated, the tracker is not in use. When the trackers are active, they're costed at the usual monthly cost, and when they're hibernated, they incur a minimal cost, which I think currently is just £1 per device per month. So it's important to stay on top of that billing. Keep a note, perhaps create an invoice, get a calendar reminder created, I should say, at the end of each month that reminds you to switch the trackers on and off, and that way the invoice that we send you at the end of each month will just reflect your actual usage. There's no value, for example, having all of your trackers activated during August if you're not going to use them. So all you would do to activate them is you would click on this little button here, and after about 5 seconds that will change to green, and then that tracker will be ready to use. And these are the months, the last 12 months shown here, and as the year progresses you will see little green dots appear in these months when the tracker has been active, and there will be a dash in there if you've deactivated. And again, if you want to deactivate the tracker, you just simply click on that button, and that will move it back to the deactivated or the hibernated status. So remember to do that, because that is very important. It does affect your billing. And for example, at the end of October, you may want to deactivate every single one of your trackers. So at the end of September, you would set yourself a reminder, deactivate all of your trackers, and that way, when we send you the invoice at the end of October, your devices would only have cost £1 each. The final button that you can use in here is to send the device a restart or reset message. Now and again, a tracker may not have updated for an hour or something along those lines, and you can sometimes prompt that device into action by doing a reset message. Generally speaking, trackers are highly reliable. As long as they're placed up on the shoulder facing upwards, then they will perform very well. But if for some reason a tracker is shuffled around or down in a bag and it hasn't sent a message, this can reset them. Of course, doing a physical restart on the device will also achieve the same thing. Let's move on to the events menu. This is where you're going to spend the vast majority of your time, and there's a drop down button here which shows your current events, your forthcoming events, past or all events. I'm going to, in this first instance, create a brand new event, and I'm going to call this event the All Around Norfolk, I think we'll call this. All Around Norfolk. I'm going to choose a date of today's date, and let's choose the ending date of tomorrow. The time is automatically populated at 5 o'clock and 1 minute to midnight. What does this do? This is simply the date span and time span that the trackers will appear on the map, and also it would impact the start time if you were doing any calculations for speed, distance and time, and I'll go on to that more complex things later on. But for right now, this essentially is the span. Once 5 o'clock rolls around, the trackers will start to appear on the map, and once 23:59 has rolled by, the trackers will vanish from the map. Next point down is password. If you want to set a password, it's optional, then you can do, and this would be prompted for password. Everyone who tried to view the link would be prompted for the password that you had set. Checkpoint detection radius. What does this do? This is to do with timing, slightly more advanced feature, but I'll touch on it now since we're here. If you were to use a route or import a route in the form of a GPX file, maybe you use EDV OS Maps Online and create routes that have got checkpoints like campsites and meeting points in them, our system will automatically stamp a time in a board against the checkpoint once the tracker roams into a radius, and in this case we've set the radius for 250 meters. So I suggest leave that alone, but by all means you can alter that if you wish. Available map providers. Generally speaking, the vast majority of people are interested in using Ordnance Survey maps, so you can, if you wish, untick the other ones, or leave the entire suite of maps available for your viewers to see. And in a similar way, you can choose which is going to be the default map which is loaded on people's devices when they open the web link. And in many cases, you'll probably want to have Ordnance Survey as your default map. Though I should say that your device will automatically remember the last used map anyway. So if you're using on your phone, you've selected OS Maps and you close it and open it again, it will default to the OS Maps when you open your phone again. Is this event a race? Generally speaking, for most of you, the answer is going to be no. What does this do? All this does is change the trackers to update at a very fast frequency when they're within the last kilometre of the finish line. And this is all to do with finish line timing in races. So I would suggest leave that set to no if you're not going to be using that feature. One thing you will want to use is the emergency contacts. You can put in up to 3 mobile telephone numbers, and they can be UK numbers or numbers from another country, as long as they're prefixed with a country code. And if anyone pushes the SOS button on the tracker, then each of those text messages will go to the recipients of that are included on here. So that's what that's useful for. This probably isn't useful to many people. This is to do with what image would be shown to people using social media if you shared the URL on there. So this is something you can get into if you wish. So all we've done really is chosen a name, and we're going to choose a date and a time, a password if you wish, and then simply click create event. And once we've created event, the screen will flash briefly and it will be ready to use, and you'll see a little icon appears here at the top, which is actually the view event. So if I click on that, that will now take us into what currently is a blank map of the UK. And at this point in time, I'm going to give you a little look around the screen here. So up in the top right corner is where you select the map types. So you can choose Google Maps, various others. OS Leisure is the popular choice. And if you click on the plus key as you roll in, you'll start to see it rolls through the layers. So let me move it up somewhere a little bit more rural. And as you zoom in, you'll see that it rolls into the 1 in 50 scale, and ultimately it will go into the 1 in 25,000 ratio map there. So that top right button is all to do with selecting the maps, and also to do with selecting routes, which I'll show you a little bit later on. Okay, what else have you got on here? This is our latest map interface, and you'll notice there's a lovely wide area that's all map, and there's no clutter and no other information on there. So we've docked all of the menus into the side. If you click on this one, it will give you the details such as the event name. It will tell you the date and time span and some contact details on there. You can collapse it by clicking the corner or indeed clicking anywhere else on the map, and that will dock it back to the start. The next you've got is the participants list. And if we click on the participants list, there would be listed all of the participants. Now, I've deliberately not put any in there at the moment to show you what happens when we do add your trackers in there. Next up, we have got a leaderboard. This takes you to another page, and this is really only pertinent if you've uploaded routes or GPX files. And if I click on that, And what would happen here is it would show you a list of all the participants and the names of any checkpoints and things like that. A lot of this functionality is used mainly by events and races, but sometimes it is used by DV as well. You can go back to the previous page by clicking the back button or clicking on the little view event map, and it'll take you back there. Finally, the key, which is the key for the tracker status or the colors. So when the trackers are moving, they'll show up in green. When they're not moving, they're orange. If they've not sent data for 1 hour, they'll go blue. And there's also red for SOS, gray if they've been marked as retired. That's mainly used for races. And finally, if a tracker has been powered off, it will show up as a black color on the map. Okay, so this event now is a basic one. It's all set up, but of course there's no participants. There are no routes applied. So let's have a look at doing that next. Okay, so once we go back into the event setup, let's go back in here. Let me go back onto the events page just to show you what that looks like. So remember, you've got the drop down which takes you to current forthcoming events. So the event I'd set up for today was the all around Norfolk, which is there, and you'll see at the end here, once again you've got that little icon which will load the map for you, and then you've got the date and times that the event is set up for. There's a little edit event icon, and there is also the share icon, and if you click on that, you'll be able to share the URL with other users via email or SMS or WhatsApp, depending on which device you're using to share it from. There's one icon missing right now, which is the edit participants, and that's because none have been added. Now that's the most important thing you need to do once you've set up the expedition. So let me click on this to go and edit it again. And now you'll see a little bit further down there's some new options popped up. This is routes and checkpoints, and this is participants. What we're going to do is assign a participant. You can assign one of your trackers, all of your trackers, but you can only assign one tracker to one event at the same time. So you can't have two events running at exactly the same time and try assign both trackers to it. So let me just assign one tracker here. I'm going to change it to tracker number 756 and number 757. And if I click on assign trackers, you can also click on the drop down box and it will show you your list of owned trackers as well. Click on assign trackers, you'll see now that 2 participants have registered. And if I click on the little edit participants person there, you will see it takes you into this edit participants area where the tracker numbers 756 and 757, which will relate to the numbers on the front of your device, are populated. As default, it calls these devices Group 1 and Group 2 and gives them a bib or a flag number as Group 1 or Group 2, and they would appear on the map accordingly. And if we go over and have a look at some of these other options here, you can split them into groups. Let's say you had 10 different trackers. You might call one of them the girls, one group the girls, and one group the boys. And this is used to as a filter on the map, so you can very quickly filter away half the trackers or some of the trackers, and that's free-form text you can type in there. These two are really only used for races, so you can set a nationality and an age category, but we're not going to worry too much about those. Start times. The start time for an event is only really applicable if you're going to be using the speed and distance and time and estimated times arrival capabilities. So the start time generally is taken from the overall start time of the event, which of course is found in here. But if you want to stagger the starts of your participants, or you're running a multi-day expedition or event, you can put different start times in here. These other buttons here are race admin. This will make a flag appear translucent, just completely see-through. If you want, for example, to give a tracker to an assessor, but you want their flag to look much more distinct or different than the rest, you can click on this little button here and the tracker will become completely see-through. You can mark a tracker as retired, which will make it go a grey colour on the map. And finally, you can override the colours by selecting the marker colour here. Now, as default, as I mentioned, if I go back onto this map again just to demonstrate for you, when a tracker flag appears, it will be completely green, completely yellow, blue, etc., depending on how it's moving. However, what we can do is affect the status of that and override the color. Let's say, for example, you wanted to have group 1, I'm going to call this the boys group, and you wanted the boys group to appear in green, and you wanted the girls group, and you wanted those to appear in purple. And then what would happen is on the map, the tracker flag would be green, a dark green and a dark purple. However, in order to still retain the useful capability of being able to see at a glance if a tracker is moving or not moving, there's a little arrow which shows you basically what the status is of the tracker. I'll illustrate that for you, I think. Let me go and change the let's say change the boys to blue color, girls to pink. And now if I go on to an event up here, you'll see that we have got the blue flag here and the pink flag, but notice that there is a little green direction of travel. That shows which way the tracker is moving, but that now has taken over the status. So as you see, that tracker just moved there actually. So when there is a green color, it means that the little green arrow, it means that the tracker is moving. If that tracker were to stay still for a few minutes, then that little arrow would turn to orange. It takes about 3 minutes of being stationary for that to happen, and so on and so forth for those other statuses. So that's what that color status does. Okay, let's go back onto the area of setting up your participants and go back. Now what I'm going to do is take you to just a quick recap. If you wanted to set up your own event, let's go through here. You click on the plus key, you go and put in the name, the start date and time, and quite simply at that point in time you could click create event, but you would usually potentially want to add some SOS telephone numbers. Following that, you would go and add in your participants. So once we go back into let me go back into the one here, and if you wanted to add your participants in, you click on assign trackers, you type in the name of your tracker and then click on add assign tracker, and that would then add it on there. And that's all you would need to do to get your trackers up and running. Now, if you want to start getting slightly more advanced, you can add routes, and you can do that by clicking on the plus button here. We've got a completely separate video which goes into detail about creating routes. Chances are you're already familiar with doing this in OS Maps Online, EDV, or another similar application, but we have got a separate video which I will share that goes into that. But fundamentally, once you've created a GPX file, you can click on add, click on choose file, and then I've got one prepared here which I'm going to click on save, and it's come up with R&R entire route, which is the name of the file which was created in OS Maps Online, and it shows we've got 18 CPs which are checkpoints, and the little edit icon here. If I click on the edit icon, you can see that there is all of the checkpoints in here, which it's picked up with all of the distances, and it's picked the default route for us as a grey silver color. If I go into and have a look at what that's done right now, you will see right now we have got let me switch on one of the different types of maps just to bring it out a little bit better for you. You can see that we've got a map of Norfolk here and the grey route which we've just imported. And there was a start and finish location, then there was a checkpoint 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what you would generally see is once your trackers start to move around, you would see them moving around on this map. And that's what the purpose of the GPX does. Up in the corner now, you'll see that the route has appeared on there, and you can choose to click it on and click it off. More often than not, you will be importing more than one GPX file. You may have 3 different GPX files for 3 different groups. You may have 6 different GPX files because it's a 2-day event and you've created a day 1 and a day 2 event. And you would do exactly the same, simply go and keep on clicking this plus button and adding each one. Now, in order to give you a little bit of differentiation capability, you can choose the slider from anywhere you like. You can slide this, or you can click on the little pipette and go and suck a color from anywhere else on the screen. But in this case, I'm going to choose an orange type color. If I click on update, then go back onto the map, you should hopefully see, there we go, that browny orange color has been reflected on there as well. So that's how to add individual routes to the event. And you can also go one step further and use these details for estimated times of arrival. So right now, that route that we just looked at is essentially a cosmetic line which has been shown on the route. But if you were to upload 3, 4, 5 or 6 different routes, then and you want to know what time people are going to arrive at checkpoint 1 or checkpoint 2 or checkpoint 10, then you can leverage some of our most sophisticated algorithms to do that. And in order to do that, once you've loaded all of your GPX files on here, you would go into your participants list and you would go and select a start time and say which route the tracker has been assigned to. So in this case, I'm going to say that the boys have been assigned to the R&R group 1, and I'm going to say that their start time today was I'm going to say it was, let's say it's 10:04. What this would do now is instruct our algorithm that this particular tracker began this route at 10:04, and it would start to do speed and distance and time calculations against that. So you'd then get very accurate calculations for what time they're going to arrive at the start, the finish, and all of the other checkpoints in between. Let's say you'd done a silver or a gold, and you created different route files, different GPXs for each day. If you created a day 1 or a day 2 or a day 3, at the end of day 2, at the end of day 1 or the beginning of day 2, you would simply go into here, select your day 2 route, and then you'd also go in and note the date is there as well. So instead of being today, you could go in and choose tomorrow, and you can select the start time tomorrow as 8:06, and then you're going to get accurate ETAs all day long. So this is the most sophisticated and the most advanced part of the setup. Largely speaking, there are 3 levels. All you're going to do is either create an event and add trackers to it, and your trackers will simply work and show on a blank map. Alternatively, you can then go in and add your GPX files to it, and then you would get that cosmetic line which appears on there, and you can add many if you want on there, lots and lots of different GPXs. Finally, if you want to leverage the speed and distance calculations as the most advanced part of our system, you can do that by going into here, choosing which routes they're assigned to on each given day, and choosing the start date and time, and potentially customizing some of these items as well. And that's it. So that hopefully is a good introduction to our system. Of course, if you've got any questions, by all means contact us. We're here to support you all the time, evenings, weekends, whenever you need to. Thank you very much for choosing our system, and we look forward to helping you with your tracking needs in the future. Thank you very much.